請各位議
Members, order please. Orders, members, you should not yell in your seats. I want the meeting to proceed. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will issue warning to you. Please take your seat. Mr. Kenneth Leung, please continue. I'm afraid I haven't started yet. Oh, yes, please.
Madam Deputy, this should be the last time I speak on this debate. Now, regarding the two amendments proposed by me on the ROP, they are relatively simple. I don't want to spend time discussing my own amendments. I'd like to comment on Dr. Martin Liao's amendments in relation to 12.3b and Rule 12.3b and Schedule 2's amendment proposed by Dr. Martin Liao. Basically, for Rule 12.3, the amendment is that the Council meeting shall be adjourned after all members present have taken an oath. And about the amendment to Schedule 1, it relates to the procedure of the Legislative Council election and on procedure for the election of President, under which the election would not be conducted at a Council meeting and the clerk to Legislature will be responsible for conducting the election. Madam Deputy, the President of the Council is very important. In the protocol of the Hong Kong SAR government, the President ranks in 7th place. So about Dr. Martin Liao's two amendments, in terms of the Constitution, the Basic Law, the Common Law, and even in the ROP, it is a contradiction and it is a contravention of the Basic Law. First of all, Madam Deputy, some members from the pro-establishment camp asked me this question. If the Secretary General or the clerk of this Legislative Council can, at the first meeting of the Legislative Council, oversee the oath-taking of members, then why can't the Secretary General conduct the election of the President of the Council? To answer this question, I'd like to talk about the enabling legislation or source of power of the Secretary General of the Council. Where does his power come from? The Secretary General has the power to oversee the oath-taking of members. It comes from Section 19A of the relevant ordinance, Oath and Affirmation Ordinance. And of course, there is also another amendment proposed by the Democratic camp in order to enhance the solemnity and the credibility of this council. It is proposed that the Chief Justice of the Court of Final Appeal should oversee the oath-taking of members. The amendment itself is not very simple because we need to discuss with the judiciary as well as the executive. However, I hope that even after this ROP amendment exercise is completed, and unfortunately after the amendments have been passed, I will continue to follow up on the amendment. I find Dr. Martin Liao's amendments illogical. It also creates some contradiction within the ROP because now in relation to the amendment to Schedule 1 on the electoral procedure, if the election would not be conducted at a council meeting, then how should it be conducted? Well, I talked to Dr. Martin Liao in private. He said that it relates to the procedure. But the procedure must be conducted on a platform. For example, the taking of oaths took place at a meeting. That is why Dr. Martin Liao mentioned in Rule 12(3) that the meeting should be adjourned after members present have taken oath. So oath-taking is also a procedure, and a procedure must take place on a platform or in a kind of a media. And this platform is a meeting. Now, if the procedure for the election of the President of the Council is just a procedure, and that it is not necessary that it takes place on a platform or through the media, it means that the rules of procedure and the House rules of the Legislative Council of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region will not apply, because this is not a council meeting. And in fact, the procedure, as pointed out by Dr. Martin Liao in Schedule 1, could take place on a social occasion among members or on a non-official occasion, gathering, even Mr. Alvin YEUNG's party, because it's just a procedure. It's not part of a council meeting. So this procedure could take place on any platform, through any medium. And this ROP would not be applied. In such circumstances, without any rules, without any guidance, how can our Secretary General fulfill his duty of overseeing the election procedure? Furthermore, let's take a look at the role of a Secretary General. Of course, the Secretary General is a public officer, but the SG is also a public servant that serves all members of this council. In other words, we are the bosses of this Secretary General. Well, some bosses may be more powerful as he's a member of the Electoral Commission, and he may have more influence on the SG. But it is true that at least this SG is responsible for serving all members, and he is also responsible for managing his team. If the responsibility of conducting the election of the President of the Council falls on the shoulder of the SG, first of all, is it fair treatment as far as he is concerned? And I'm not even talking about his powers. Yesterday, I raised a point of order. It was a simple one. I asked about the contract of the Electoral Commission, and that this very important duty of conducting the President's election isn't really covered in his contract. Electing the President is a very solemn and important process. Of course, there were hiccups in this term's election of the President. But the root of the problem is that our incumbent President has not been able to explain very clearly to us whether, as a candidate of the President, he could meet the basic laws requirement on the President of the Legislative Council, that is Article 71. Especially, the two major principles are that he shall be a permanent resident who has ordinarily resided in Hong Kong for a continuous period of not less than 20 years, and that he shall be a Chinese citizen of not less than 40 years of age who is a permanent resident of the region with no right of abode in any foreign country. So he should have ordinarily resided in Hong Kong for a continuous period of 20 years at least. And he should not have any foreign nationality. Of course, other members provided a solution. Very simply, we can change Schedule 1 of the ROP, first requesting the prospective candidates to make a statutory declaration in accordance with the Oath and Affirmation Ordinance. A few months ago, I proposed this amendment for discussion at the CROP, and it's not really filibustering. I was only trying to fix the issue, and we discussed the issue for a few months. Schedule 1, however, remained unchanged. If we want to rationalize the electoral procedure, of course we can dig deeper into Schedule 1. We can ask the member conducting the election who has the highest order of precedence to do certain things in order to complete the procedure of the election of president. Only by doing so can we, procedurally speaking, in this solemn occasion of electing the president, allow this president so elected to meet the requirements of the basic law. At present, regarding the legal issues and regarding the issues arising from the ROP, we're seeing this major contradiction. You're changing Rule 12(3). However, you have not made another corresponding amendment, 12(2), that is. Well, basically, Rule 12(2) and 3 are contradictory. After amending Rule 12(2), we need to ask whether number 4 also applies, because it also relates to the election of the electoral president. And in such circumstances, when the election is no longer part of the council meeting, what rules should apply? This is an outstanding issue yet to be solved, and I am going to follow up on this matter after the ROPs are amended on this occasion. I'm going to move another amendment, but like many members from the pro-establishment camp say, we can all put our heads together and discuss the matter. Well, election of a president comes once every 4 years. I don't think this will be a perpetual problem if we just spend some time and properly amend the rule. We can maintain solemnity, because we talk about discussion, cooperation just now. I do hope that we can work on this. Coming back to other members' amendments, as I mentioned the first time I spoke on this debate, I said that there are 7 principles that we adhere to in our amendments, and I don't think many amendments are controversial. For example, I can refer to my own amendment, that is to increase the resources for our secretariat. At the level of subcommittees, committees, panels, etc., there should be a deputy clerk. With the consent of the Secretary General, we can have a deputy clerk provided for every committee and subcommittee of the Council. At the moment, motions moved by Democrats can be voted on separately, and my other amendment is to shorten the period of notice from 14 clear days to 12 clear days. Again, this is not controversial. If the pro-establishment camp really upholds the spirit of cooperation and would like to see common ground while setting aside our differences, he should support this amendment. I don't see, I haven't heard any argument why my 2 amendments should be opposed, because basically these amendments would help enhance the efficiency and the quality of deliberations in the Council. So I urge all members across the political spectrum to consider my two proposed amendments, and also as Deputy Chair of the Committee on Rules of Procedure, I am going to put forward a proposal in the committee on the election of President of the Council. I hope that we can all fix this. I so submit, Madam Deputy.
Dr. Fernando Cheung. This debate on amendments to the Rules of Procedure is now in this final stage. I can see there is actually no room for negotiation. We've been trying to give all these reasons. It's waste of breath. Kenneth Leung asked the pro-establishment camp to look at the issues we've raised, because your prefect has moved amendment that against the basic law is self-contradictory. It's obvious. And the rules are clear. The president should be elected after members have taken their oath. But now you're saying that the president should be elected outside of a council meeting. It's neither here nor there. And it's also self-contradictory. It's only too obvious. Now, if there are any reasons to talk about, we've done so. We've listened very carefully to the speeches of the loyalists, but there's actually no room for negotiation. They just stand their ground. And they took the opportunity to attack the Democrats. Mr. Gary Chan, you think that when this seat is not taken up, then we're not doing any work. You kept saying, look at the other side. You know, who's calling who lazy? Look at the pro-establishment camp. We're all here. We're so hardworking. Well, just by sitting here, you're hardworking? You know that. You know, whether you're hardworking or you're lazy is not because whether you're sitting here or not. For directly elected members, especially members of the Democratic camp, if we're lazy, do you think we'll get enough votes to be voted in? Some of you who've been through direct election, you know this is not an easy process. You may have resources 100 times those of ours, and you have behind you some powerful backup 10,000 times more powerful than ours. You know that. Yes, Mr. Andrew Wang. Yes, what is your point of order? Just now, Dr. Fernando Cheung, as he was speaking, other members kept shouting. So please ask members to observe order, because I couldn't follow his speech. Now, I've all repeatedly reminded members that the rules of procedure must be observed by all. And just before, just not long ago, there were many members who did not observe the rules of procedure, and still I ask members to remain quiet in their seats. So, Dr. Fernando Cheung, please continue. Following the rules of procedure is just our duty. Is essential. Now, we're talking about a council culture that's been around for hundreds of years. And we have these rules of procedure for hundreds of years, but still you want to further tighten the rules. And it's a one-sided control of the rules of procedure. Now, I won't repeat what I said yesterday. In Hong Kong already there is much imbalance. In our political system, we're not able to address the imbalance. We're just helping the powerful even more. If you cast your sight further, in our whole country, the party is everything. The party is even above the country, the state. And that's a major imbalance. And under those circumstances, the Democrats here are criticized all the time, say that we're not doing this right, we're not doing that right, you can't do this, you can't do that. And in all the important committees will be the chairman, and will decide who to let obviously, or if we want, we'll give you some of the chairmanship or deputy chairmanship, but if not happy, we won't even give you anything. You give us the names. If you accept that name, we'll let you have one of the seat, chairmanship or deputy chairmanship. So you're in control of everything. And then you trump us, and then even now you're taking this opportunity to tighten the rules of procedure, and then you tell people you're not taking advantage of our plight. And then it's just the pro-establishment camp trying to put things right. Honestly, that's what you said. So you have the total upper hand, and then you complain we don't follow the rules. But do we have other choices? Are there any other ways for us to at least try to maintain the social balance? If you say there's balance, look at the wealth gap. We are ranked number 1 among all advanced economies in terms of the wealth gap, and our property prices are far higher than Sydney is the second place on the ranking. Our property prices are many times higher than those for Sydney. So, say for young people, how many could afford to buy their homes and start a family? So, where is the balance? Many are living in subdivided flats. For the healthcare system, it's collapsing. Which of you dare to rely entirely on the public healthcare system? Yes, you may shout slogans, but you actually couldn't deliver. And we can't reflect these views in this council. We can't take the government to task. And, we consider many of the infrastructure projects, the white elephant projects, there are hundreds of billions dollars of Hong Kong people's money poured into these projects, and these projects have suffered cost overrun, delays, and so on. We just tried to monitor the progress of these projects. We couldn't even do that. Even for something minor, like my amendment to Rule 2 to include sign language, you won't allow it. And you say it could be dealt with through administrative means. But how can you do that? Because Rule 2 states clearly, a member may address the council in either Putonghua, Cantonese, or the English language, full stop. So can you speak in French? Can you speak in German? No, of course not. Can you use sign language? No, of course not. So how do you address that through administrative means? So you're trying to lie to people. You're trying to deceive people. That's what Mr. Gary Chan says. So you see, look at this side, all the seats are empty, so they're lazy. And on this side, we're all here, so we are hardworking. But this is a struggle. This is confrontation. And you say members will not come to the meeting, and when you try to seek our views, we won't come to the meeting. But that's our struggle. If we have been lazy, how could we have come back to this council? Honestly, only those members who could get elected without any votes would have a chance to be lazy. And for several terms, these members stay put here. They have no voters. No one voted, and they just came back. What kind of rules is that? And these are the kind of rules that need to be changed. And what is the urgency in amending the rules of procedure? Functional constituencies in this council, that must be changed at once. Of course, you won't want to change that because you have vested interest. You are all taking up these seats, so just 100 voters could vote in a legislative councillor. Many of you are like that. Now, for those elected ipso facto without no votes, Kenneth Lau of Hung Yee Kok, Chang Kim Po of Insurance sector is also the chairman of the Finance Committee. From Abraham Sheikh from the real estate, from property sector, and then from commerce sector, Martin Liu, and then from the industrial sector, Jimmy Andrew Leung, our president, and from the financial services sector, Chen Chen-ying, from the import-export sector, Wong Ting-kwong, and from district council, Lau Kok-fan, and there are 3 others, Michael Lok, and 2 others. And Wong Ting-kwong is returned 4 times without opponents. Andrew Leung, president, is returned 4 times without opponents. Abraham Sheikh, we have great respect for him, but for 4 terms he's returned here without opponents. What sort of rules is that? We had to fight so hard for our seats. Every time we run for an election, we need so much resources and manpower. We have to appeal to hundreds of thousands, even millions of voters. We have to explain our platform to them. And then these are the members elected without any votes. This term is 12 members. Last term there were 16 members like that. They didn't have to run for election. You know, if it's just 100 voters, they just need to go to a restaurant, have dinner, you know, several tables, and then they could agree on who to support. Now, even for functional constituencies, if there is more than 10,000 voters, you can see for these seats, they're all taken up by the Democrats. So you see the structure matters, the rules matter. But these rules have stood in the way of Hong Kong's development for so many years. It stood in the way of the development of people's livelihood, culture, environment, and so on. These are structural difficulties. You won't change that, and now you just want to change the rules of procedure and further limit our powers to monitor the government here. So that's the mission of the loyalist camp. Your mission is to defend the government, is to protect the government. You want to make sure that between you and the government you could continue to call the shots. You will continue to have your powers, your interest, and you represent these so-called functional constituencies. That's why it's not possible for us to have a better balance, to have more justice in society, you know, or more caring. That's the term you use. You know, I don't like to use the term caring. Caring is something from top down, but here we're promoting equality. We're promoting participation. We're promoting autonomy for individuals, dignity for individuals. And what are we talking about here? Now, here we are supposed to represent the people, the grassroots, and you say we are troublemakers, and you are the one following the rules. But the rules are dictated by you. Of course, you ask us to observe the rules. Every time there's a vote, you always win. Of course, you want us to follow the rules. And you say, no, then it's fine, that's not going to be a problem, there won't be imbalance in the council. But it's not us who say that. There are some over 4,000 people signing this petition. There are several dozens of scholars among them. And we would consider them to be the more independent scholars. And they're saying, your kind of amendments to the rules of procedure would severely undermine the council's powers to monitor the government, and you also lead Hong Kong towards autocratic government, or at least there's a chance for that to happen. So this is not what I said. Now we're at this stage of the debate. Is it the case that we could just be good, follow the rules, and reason with you, and then we can get things done? I've been legislator for close to 10 years. I wouldn't call myself an experienced legislator, but still I'm very disappointed. I find that if we just reason, it simply doesn't work here. It's obvious. If we just try to debate with you, because you've been corrupted by power. You've been used to calling the shots. You just consider our voice noises. And you say that you don't matter. Please don't stand in the way. What we do is absolutely right. What we do is must never be challenged. This is what our president does now. So whatever we do, it has to be the best. And there's no room for debate. That must not be challenged. Don't stand in the way. Efficiency comes first. Everyone must be able to make money or make a living. So people of Hong Kong, just be good, work 60 hours a week. Doesn't matter if you get a low pay, as long as you get a job. You know, just wait. Doesn't matter if you couldn't afford to buy a home now. Stand in line. It will be your turn eventually. Follow the rules, be good, and be obedient. Our rules may change. We will further tighten rules, but doesn't matter. Keep following the rules. If you don't follow the rules, you're lazy. If you don't follow the rules, you're bad. If you don't follow the rules, you are breaking the law. So we will arrest you. We will disqualify you, or we might even change the rules. And then we have the interpretation power. So it's entirely up to us. It's entirely up to us. So let's see how long that will last.
Mr. Jeremy Tam. Madam Deputy, call for quorum, please. Mr. Jeremy Tam claims quorum. Quorum bell, please.
會議法定人。
We have formed a quorum now. The meeting resumes. Mr. Jeremy Tam, please continue.
Madam Deputy, about this amendment exercise, the loyalists always say that they want to tackle filibustering. It seems that they're demonizing filibustering. They suggest that filibustering is the ultimate weapon. However, what is the reality? In the past, can we take a look at the motions passed with the support of the majority, that is the pro-establishment camp, versus the filibustering campaigns mounted by the other side? I'd like to respond to some members' points. I agree strongly with Mr. Abraham Shak's speech. He is a very experienced member. Now, he said that members should be allowed to speak, and that is permissible under the ROP, and their right to make speeches should be defended. And he will try to do the same to defend members who would like to speak. I saw this in him on one occasion when a Democrat was speaking. On one occasion, the Mr. Paul Chair stood up and interjected, and I remember very clearly that Mr. Shak stood up and asked the other member not to interject. Then he also talked about the loss of mutual trust. But is this the basis for amending the ROP? And Mr. Abraham Shak talked about the ideal reality, but can we do that in practice? Because he said that we should respect not the president himself, but the chair, that symbolizing the status of the president. But what we see is that we have a joint debate on these various motions with a cheating referee. Can we really effectively debate on today's motions? I also tried, but in vain. So we cannot do that. Dr. Priscilla Leung said that their camp mounted 2 campaigns to abort the meetings. In 2012, because of the de facto referendum, they would like to stop members from speaking. And like Mr. Abraham Shak said just now, according to the ROP, members should be allowed to speak. But according to Dr. Priscilla Leung, it was a deliberate effort to stop members from speaking. My point is, if we put everything in the hands of the member as a person, what we don't want is that we want the rule of law, not the other way around. We want a framework so that within the framework we can have freedom of speech. Regrettably, although some members might think that this is good and that is they have the very best intentions, there is still distortion. And I'm not referring to members from any particular camp. But the problem is we do not know which members are abusing the ROP, and that is why we need to rely on the ROP. Well, if you say that it is for the best interest of the country that you call for quorum leading to abortion of meeting, what about the constitutional reform proposal? You were trying to wait for a quorum to be formed, and you therefore ask for a call for quorum lasting for 15 minutes. And for the pro-establishment camp, they also try to make use of the ROP in such a way. But when it's the other side who is using ROP in such a way, you call them filibustering. Mr. Chan Paul, Chairman of the Finance Committee, said that filibustering would not help us in monitoring the government. What about the Medical Registration Amendment Bill? Had there not been filibustering back then, there wouldn't have been this new platform today, a platform with the support of all sides. And also in NT East, originally, for a housing estate, there was not a market, and because of filibustering, eventually the government provided more stalls in the market. Is it really futile attempt? Like Mr. Abraham Sheck, the president should be fair and impartial. It was before I joined the Legislative Council as a member that the Finance Committee chairman stopped everything and then reminded the pro-establishment camp to vote yes. So was the chairman really being impartial? Or was he abusing his status as chairman of the committee? Was he abusing his power to exert influence on the voting result? That is why there is a great discrepancy between the reality and what is suggested by Mr. Abraham Sheck. If you want to make use of the ROP, you can come up with a lot of grounds of support, but you also criticize others for doing the same. That is why I don't think ROP should be abused in such a way. Dr. Elizabeth Quat just now, on her own initiative, stood up for 30 seconds not knowing what to do because she thought that there should be a call for quorum the last quarter of an hour. And she even asked whether we wanted a quorum call. But it should be her decision whether she wanted us to stay in the chamber or not. So I do agree, Madam Deputy, that this is unhealthy. But why has it become so unhealthy? It is because more and more members are abusing the loopholes. If you're the majority, you can have a greater say in this chamber. And when the majority, this council, is being oppressed, they would naturally turn to, resort to different ways to fight back. It's about resistance. So in theory, it is good, but in practice, it is impossible. Madam Deputy, now we have 6 Democrats fewer in this council. We cannot reach a consensus. And further down the road, what will happen is that we will be resorting to even more drastic means. Madam Deputy, now I'd like to go back to an episode in the past. Mr. Paul Chair once proposed a very interesting CSA in relation to a bill. He said that it was a serious matter. It was proposed by Mr. Paul Chair with voting records in relation to who could be a Legislative Council member. For example, the candidate should not exceed 5'4", and the education qualification should not exceed the senior secondary, and also must not earn $10,000 a month. I don't know whether you have this recollection. Back then, Chester Batang, the then president, allowed Mr. Paul Chair to move this motion, which went through the voting process. And in the end, the person moving the motion voted against the motion. There was no vote in support of the motion. So why was it all right for him to do so? What was the ground for he to do so? With the amendments being passed, nobody will no longer be able to do that. I wonder if any member would like to raise a point of order. Order, please, member. Please continue. Thank you, Madam Deputy. So it's all right for you to do it, but not other members. And this is just not right. Now, he said that sometimes it may not be solely destructive for us to advocate some political ideas. It may be, we may be able to debate the truth through this. And it's the verbatim record in Hansard. Don't think that this isn't just a joke. I just want to debate on the matter with this process, and that's what happened. It was Mr. Paul Chair who moved this motion. Now, with the same ROP, isn't it that he could do it, but others can't do the same? Finally, I'd like to clarify one thing. This council is inherently abnormal. We have FC members with 0 vote. We have manipulation by the Western District. We have members being disqualified. No such parliament in the world has experienced everything like this. And then members who win the minority outside the chamber could get a majority in this council. And then the Democrats are totally helpless. And you call this the norm? Madam Deputy, clearly this is not normal in this council. Aren't you being naive? You are telling lies so often that you are even fooling yourself. Well, this member who has 0 vote in support dare to quote the system in Western democratic countries. He's shameless. And he holds the British passport, despite being a member for so many years. And then all of a sudden, because of election of the president, he decided to give up on the British passport and suggest that he should pledge allegiance to the motherland. Eventually, we are mainlandizing this council. It has become, or it is becoming, the NPC. I won't say that he hasn't the power, because he has as president. What about his qualification? He has been of British nationality for so many years. He has won 0 votes in the elections, and now he can rule on matters in the council. Who can give a speech and who cannot? If it's really out of good intentions, if he really aspired to democracy, he should support the abolition of functional constituencies and promote direct elections. After amending the ROP, I don't think that this council's operation will be smooth. Rather, there will be more abuse of power, and things will be even less normal. In the end, you will be the victim. In a moment when the motions are voted on, this record, the record would show the voting result, and people would be able to tell who or which members are selling off Hong Kong. Well, several days ago, we already demonstrated the presentation of petitions, and then this practice will be abolished. The pro-establishment camp says it's all right. We're going to support your petition if it's worthwhile. And when Mrs. Regina Abrams spoke, she also revealed that actually 2 members from the DAB also wanted to stood up, and we should have lobbied their support. But shouldn't they exercise independent thinking? Shouldn't members decide on themselves whether to support the petition, or would you just sit here and wait for instructions from the Western District, and would you just do other people's bidding? Are you representing the Western District? If you think that this motion is petition is worthy of your support, you should stand up. And you're even taking this away so that the threshold will be raised to 35. Now, your side has 35, much more than 35. If you'd like to present a petition, you can do that. But petition must not be presented by the Democrats. You're moving goalposts, and you should bear in mind that You have even changed the wording of a select committee, and so far no one has explained why. Instead of setting up a select committee directly, the petition will be referred to the House Committee for further handling. What's the reasoning? If you have 35 members standing in support of the petition, why can't a select committee be set up directly? There is no explanation, Madam Deputy. This may be the last time we could set up a select committee by way of presenting petition, because you're going to spend 30 seconds to address the issue in the House Committee.
Mr. Dennis Kwok. Yes, can start the clock. Madam Deputy, I was using sign language to ask you whether in this council members may address the council in sign language. Now, Dr. Fernando Cheung mentioned sign language in his speech just now. Now, you know, of course, Dr. Fernando Cheung cares very much about the disadvantaged. But on the question of sign language for the deaf, he's been following up on that for years. Just now, when he talked about sign language, what did he get in response? There was just sneering by the pro-establishment camp. You think the deaf and the dumb are a joke? Do you think sign language is a joke? And I heard the loyalists saying that if you are that good, you can speak in sign language. Is that how shameless you've become now? There's amendment on sign language. In many other parliaments, sign language has become one of the allowed languages. Do you have to laugh at that? And so loudly too? And then you challenged him as to whether he could speak in sign language. Yes, unfortunately, there are people who are deaf or dumb who have to use sign language. And you find that funny? You find that really funny? This is outrageous, honestly. Now, there are some members in the loyalist camp, honestly. Now, we've come to this stage of the debate. Members could still, with the rules of procedure, perform the duty as legislator. Now, in a democratic society, in the ecology of a council that we would like to see, what sort of duties do legislators have? Of course, to enact bill laws, to debate laws, debate government policies. So government policies could be reflected in laws, and then government's ruling is acceptable to the public. Now, if we want to have authority, we must have a proper system to conduct business. There must be impartial enforcement and observance of the rules of procedure, so different voices could all be heard. And then the public, the government could take on board these voices and incorporate them into relevant laws and policies. It's like in a court. Of course, there are many arguments there, but at the end, the court ruling is acceptable because there is a proper judicial system. Justice can be served because the legal system and the judicial system ensures that matters can be dealt with in a fair and impartial manner. The rules of procedure are one of the important manifestations of procedural justice in this council. The rules of procedure are meant to allow each member in this council to speak on behalf of their voters on various public affairs. Now, in this term of the Legislative Council, now we have amendments moved to rules of procedure. It's often said that this is to stop filibustering. Now, I've said it many times. If the loyalists believe that this is the source of the problem and they can stamp it out then. And if they honestly believe that by amending rules of procedure, they could address the difficulties of this council faced by this council, or they could address the controversies, well, I think they're being childish and naive to think so. They've also demonstrated perfectly that if you want to address any problems, you then deal with those who cause the problems. Make sure that they cannot speak out their aspirations here. Make sure that they cannot perform their duties as members. Why is it that the Loyalists want to push through these amendments to the rules of procedure? Now, the Loyalists keep saying that they are trying to defend the system. They want to establish a system, but actually they are destroying the system. They are destroying a time-honored system in this council. Now, for example, raising the threshold for presenting petitions from 20 to 35, or further expanding the powers of the president so he has even more discretion and powers to decide on everything. Even for the process to elect president, it will be handed over to the Secretary General to be carried out in a non-formal meeting. What is the legal or constitutional basis for doing that? And note too, for this election process of the president, has it ever been studied or discussed at the Committee on Rules of Procedure? Has outside legal advice been sought as to whether this is constitutional? On the 18th of December, that will be the 173rd anniversary of the first set of standing orders of the previous former Legislative Council before the reunification. So on that day, the biggest irony is that we're going to pass a large number of amendments to rules of procedure to completely change this time-honored rules of procedure, which have been relatively fair and impartial. Now, amending the rules of procedure would limit the freedom of speech of members. More importantly, it will undermine members' powers to perform the duty in monitoring government. It will belittle the government. And there will be even more imbalance in the separation of powers. Most powers will be handed over to one person, the president. That is not check and balance. The president will have increasing powers, and he will become more and more of an autocratic person. Now, as I said already, even before the amendments of the rules of procedure, he's been partial in many of his rulings. He's been liberal with the pro-establishment government. He's trying to make things difficult for the pan-democrats. He no longer explains its details. He no longer explains in detail his reasons for a certain ruling. He keeps just quoting Article74 of the Basic Law or conventions in accordance with the basic rules of procedure. And often we hear him say this, my decision is final, is not open to debate. Now, if the president believes that by keep saying this, then he can handle all the various arguments in this council, and if he thinks that he can deal with all the issues in this council, then this president has to be absolutely dumb. In other parliaments, a president may make a ruling, and if members do not agree, then they can go through certain procedures, and in their chamber, they could give reasons why they don't agree to the president's ruling, and this will be put on record. So people will then be able to find out the reasons why they didn't agree to certain decision much later on. And then there could be another debate on that. Now, yesterday I was just saying why we couldn't accept the various rulings of the president. Immediately he said I was I was out of order, and he said I was imputing motive. Now, I just want to remind the president this: if you wouldn't even listen to different views or criticisms about your rulings, and you don't have the broad-mindedness to deal with that, then when this council faces challenge again, you will be incapable of dealing with that, because you don't even have this bit of grace. Now, the members are not questioning your motive; they're just pointing out your motive. So for the president or the madam or for the deputy, when you preside over meetings, please don't just say that your decision is final and is not open to debate, because then it would make things even more difficult for this council, and it would just drive further wedge between the two camps, and there will be no mutual trust, and it will be difficult for all of us. Some say members shouldn't stand in the way of the government so much, because if we do that, it will be even more difficult for the government. So we mustn't stand in the way of the government so much, and hopefully the government will become better on its own. I agree. Being a legislator is an honor. That's what Mr. Jeffrey Lam said. But it must be because members carefully consider all bills and motions, and then we scrutinize all bills and motions in a responsible manner, because this may have an impact on the public. But then the pro-established camp just doesn't bother. They just say it's about filibustering. So in a short period of time, without any consensus, they try to jump the gun, because we are 6 short. And so in just a few minutes, they sped through a large number of amendments to the rules of procedure. It was the case at the Committee on Rules of Procedure, the case at the House Committee, is the case here. Now, I said this before. If you look at the last term of the Legislative Council, the government tabled 89 bills. We passed 83 of them. 90% of the bills were passed. In other words, in each year we considered about 20-odd bills. If you look around the world, in any parliament, this is very good, decent figure. 567 pieces of subsidiary legislation.
And were passed. 呢一個又係咪一個議會完全？
So is that a sign of total imbalance in this council? If you say the government tables 100 bills or 100 motions, we just pass all of them by voting yes, I don't think that's what the loyalists would like to see. I would like to stress that the Pandemocrats are trying to make use of the room allowed in the rules of procedure and play their role. If necessary, they will fight against evil laws. Maybe it's not even an evil law like the medical registration bill. There was much controversy, and you see for this time the government, they spent more time consulting or speaking to stakeholders, and the proposal is so much better, and there's so much less opposition. So that's the way to govern. Now, I have just a few minutes left. I can't really make use of that time remaining for me to analyze in detail what the consequences would be with the amendments. I just want to ask the President this. The so-called normal operation that you would like to see, what price are you prepared to pay for that? For this so-called normal operation, that is for all 89 bills, it's best that they all pass, all of them without one not passed. Is that the so-called normal operation? Is that what you want to see in this council? If there's something you'd like to see in this council, what is the price for that? For this new term of the Legislative Council, now CY Leung, the Chief Executive, hated by all, he left. We all hope that things will be back to a better state. Let's remember this. A member or few members don't yield much influence, but the influence of this council together could be immense. Now, we have spent so much time, wasted so much political energy, and at the expense of mutual trust, we are sowing the seeds of discord just to push through amendments to the rules of procedure. What would be the consequence? Yes, Mr. Kwok, please hold. Mr. Hon Charles, what is your point of order, please? Well, I wait till he's about to finish before I raise this point of order, because just now I heard Mr. Dennis Kwok say this about all members of the pro-establishment camp. He made an accusation. He said that we mocked the deaf and the dumb. That's a serious allegation. I would like him to elucidate, because I believe that we will not laugh at the deaf and the dumb. Yes, okay, you have raised a point of elucidation. Mr. Kwok, would you elucidate? Well, I just won't retract what I said. If you wish, you could throw me out. Mr. Hon Charles asked you to elucidate. If you choose not to elucidate, you can continue. I have said all I wanted to say. If Mr. Charles wants to defend themselves with this point of order, save it. You know, you're not good enough yet. Mr. Dennis Kwok, I just want to say this. Did you say that any member here is not up to scratch and they could just save their breath? Are you going to retract that? No, I won't. So you can evict me if you wish.
Are you going to take back your words? No. Please continue. Please continue. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Under the circumstances, we feel very sad to see what LegCo has become. Ms. Hon Charles, do you wish to explain how you were misunderstood? Madam Deputy, this has to do with all the pro-establishment members. If he refused to take back his words, I just want to point out that his accusations were ungrounded. Dr. K.K. Kwok. Madam Deputy, we are coming to the end of the debate on the amendments to the ROP. So we have made basically all the criticisms we have to make, so I do not wish to waste more time on this. But there are a few points I want to say to the pro-establishment members. The function of a legislature is to protect the vulnerable. It aims to protect those with no rights and powers against the powerful machine, whether it is the Hong Kong SAR government or the Chinese Communist Party or the pro-establishment camp here. Anyone who jeopardizes the rights of the legislature is only harming it. Through the rules of procedure, the rights would be enjoyed by the majority, and such powers are not balanced. The executive and the pro-establishment camp here can do whatever they want today. So the role of legislators is to reflect the views of the public. When tens or hundreds of billions dollars worth of white elephant projects face budget overruns all the time, when much needed services or policies, whether it's universal retirement protection, standard working hours, elderly homes or hospital beds, the government chose to ignore all of them, and this is this is the place to speak out. when you talk about amending rules of procedure, if we have a democratic legislature and a democratic government, then we can talk. But we are yet to achieve this. While we talk about defending the dignity of the legislature, in 2007 to 8, or 2016 to 17, or even 2020, why don't we aim for universal suffrage of the Legislative Council? And the DAB used to say that the dual universal suffrage was among their agenda in 2007 to 8. That is part of the basic law. Do not think that the public or the Democratic camp made them up. There would be universal suffrage of the Chief Executive and Legislative Council by 2007 to 8. If not for the interpretation of the laws by the NPC, we would not need to resort to filibustering when the voice of the majority of the public could not be reflected. Well, we would certainly lose out in votes because the loyalists are the majority. So we cannot just expect the knife to fall upon us. I want to address what some pro-exception members said. I agree with Dr. Low Wai Kwok. It's easy to destroy, yet harder to build. Yourself and the pro-exception camp are damaging the legislature. It's very hard to rebuild it from scratch, barring a miracle or support from the central authority. But in the under the existing system, which is skewed, you can, well, you are just destroying it. Mr. Hon Charles said 15 minutes is not enough for us. We asked for more time from the president, but the president agreed to have a joint debate, so you should criticize him. So why did you agree? Mr. Jeremy Tam read out those proposals one by one, and he couldn't finish within 15 minutes. So you should have asked for more time from Andrew Leung. Whether the vote will take place today, tomorrow, or next week, you are going to win anyway. You talk about convention of LegCo. You often cite the conventions from Westminster. I hope you know that the UK Parliament is democratic or elected. You should aim for direct election in our Legislative Council. Then we can talk. And Mr. Wong Kwok Kin said that amendments to the RLP serves to make people pay. Sometimes I agree with the stance of the FTU for universal retirement protection, standard working hours. But do you know that when the government said there would be no universal retirement protection and standard working hours, did the FTU suddenly forget about everything?
You need to protect the system. You criticize about housing policy, saying that there are problems, but you have a lot of seats in the EXCO and the LegCo. So how come you agree to a halt in HOS production when Donald Tsang suggested it? You're not in a position to tell us that that we have no political ethics. Political ethics is for you to point out the fact that the administration refuses to improve benefits in terms of residential care homes for the elderly, universal retirement scheme, employment protection, etc. So you're not in a position to talk to us about political ethics. Gary Chan said and even quoted Analects of Confucius. I don't know how to comment on that because I'm not like him. I won't just quote quotes. Well, Confucius talked about a modest society and an utopia. Anyway, these societies are places where people are equal. And in Hong Kong, that means one person, one vote. I do hope that you bear that in mind. Mr. Jeffrey Lam talks about moving things back onto the right track, that in terms of healthcare, education, and social welfare, something has to be done. Well, you know that the business sector is the biggest benefactor of all the government policies at the expense of the public. When do you ever fight for social welfare, education, and healthcare? Every single time. Say, for example, when it comes to universal retirement protection, you said that, well, it won't do. You always side with the administration at the expense of the welfare and the well-being of the people. I respect Abraham Sheikh because he's one of the rare legislators amongst the loyalists. However, when he spoke, he criticized Joseph Chen. I would like to quote some verses of the Bible. Words to the effect that you may offer me offerings, and you may say your blessings to me, you may sing to me. Well, there are people who hated Jesus because, well, there was a disruption. Well, I really think that if Jesus were alive, he would fight with us for dual universal suffrage and universal retirement protection. Unless, I think you're all Pharisees. And I do think that the LegCo looks more like the NPC, the National People's Congress. The representative of the accountants sector, Mr. Kenneth Leung, said that, well, he has a point because NPC delegates, they have a lot of power. They are so powerful that they can come to Hong Kong to announce orders. And I think it is the same line of thinking. But I think in the future there will be a party secretary here. Because on the mainland, if there is the word secretary, then you will have to show extra respect because there's also always the case that they are very powerful. How come? Well, perhaps in the future the Secretary General can become the something like the party secretary. The Chinese title should be termed Su Gei, like on the mainland. Natural justice. Well, when I hear this term, well, I do think that you can actually see it. When everyone is equal, when we see that everyone in Hong Kong is equal, then there is natural justice. We criticize the functional constituency. We have a point. Mr. Sheikh was returned by just tens of thousands of voters with 30 seats, 35 seats, and they have equal weights in their votes, just like those returned in the GC. And there is an electoral base of millions of people. This is not natural justice. You may say that this is a historical legacy. This is a product of the colonial government and the central authorities. But if we trust the basic law, if we trust that Hong Kong do need to move forward, I hope that you will withdraw the words of praise of the FC. Lastly, I want to talk about quality democracy. Well, I'm amazed. Dr. Kwok? Mr. Check, point of order, I ask the member to elucidate. Well, when they took oath, they said that they had to safeguard the basic law. And the basic law is stipulated in the FC. So he is doing something different from what he said. I don't think that is a point for elucidation. When they talk about quality democracy, is there a bad democracy? We do see that our great motherland has been arresting and sending activists in prison, and we see that Nobel laureate Liu Xiaobo died in prison. However, great motherland organized their own human rights forum, and I now know what is quality democracy. That is quality democracy. That is quality human rights. But we ask for genuine democracy, under which one person will have one vote. No matter what I say, under our current voting system, all these demonic amendments will be passed. But I want the public to see the ugly faces of the loyalists. And I ask youngsters in Hong Kong to open their eyes. We may lose this battle, but I have hopes for our younger generation that they will step out, they will kick out the loyalists. And in the end, Hong Kong will have genuine freedom and democracy. Every person will have one vote, and that's especially important for the mainland because they will never see it, and Hong Kong will be the first place to have it. I so submit. Mr. Ray Chan. This battle of ROP amendment is coming to a close. Well, this is the time for us to reply. The loyalists line up after we have all spoken to criticize us. But however, they want to meet their target. So only a dozen or so of them will stand up to accuse us and to fabricate fake things about us. If you really want to endorse these amendments, you don't have to say, because you're a machine to vote yes and to raise your hands in consent. So you don't have to say anything. But just now, Dennis Kwok talk about as some people saying that they are below standard. Well, did you hear what Chen Kin-po said? He is the chairman of the Finance Committee, and he said someone hasn't even finished their education when they join. So what contribution will that person give? Well, who did he refer to? Nathan Law. But it doesn't really matter, even if he named the person, because the ROP protects people here and not those outside. So he said that Nathan Law hasn't even finished his education, and he would make no contribution. Well, I do think that they have narrow minds, so they can only see so much. And in Chinese, it refers to a dog, and I don't want to insult dogs. So I would like to say that the Chan Kin-po's vision is so narrow that it's like somewhere that never sees the sun. Do you have to have high level of education before you can contribute to society? I would wager that Nathan Law will get more votes, even though I don't have much in my wealth. What about Leung Kok Hong? Who will have more votes, Leung Kok Hong or Chan Kin-po? I'm sure that the answer is written on the wall. Well, I would like to say that the contribution made by a legislator is nothing to do with the level of education. We have a lot of doctors here, the doctors of philosophy here, and they have never managed to produce that certificate. And you talk about level of education. Jeffrey Lam said that the 6 who have been disqualified is a disgrace to our race. And I hope that everyone, if they utter these words, should exercise caution. If you want to refer to a person, refer to that person particularly. And it seems like they liken disqualification with independence. How did long hair insult the Chinese race? Well, what about the Diaoyu Island? How many people will go to protest outside the Japanese consulate? And someone will say, don't do that because, the relations between China and Japan at the moment is quite good. Well, you can't liken it to wearing kimono. I have, or Japanese costume. I have done it before. I know you will win this battle. And I would like to seriously respond to what Martin Liu said in respect of what he said about decorum and propriety and the classics. Yes, decorum and propriety is disintegrating. Why? Because they want to do it so that they can shirk their responsibilities. Now they want to regularize and rationalize for being lazy. Oh, I forgot to respond to Abraham Sheck. He looks at me now. He said that FC is enshrined in the Basic Law. Does it mean that if we say something that is not in line with the Basic Law means we have contravened the Basic Law and we will be subject to disqualification? The Basic Law states half of all its members, 35 being the quorum, but now you have so brutally taken it out to say that it should be reduced. I can't talk about abolishing the FC, and you say that I contravene the Basic Law and I don't respect it simply because I talk about it. Well, I haven't formally introduced this picture. It's made by netizens. It's the slumber of loyalists. Well, they are not young. Well, and it shows, it's put in full display how the loyalists were slumbering. It's great. It's of great advertising effect. Being industrious is one of Hong Kong's core values. Hong Kong people rely on their hard work and labor to earn a wage. A lot of our honorable legislators score a very low attendance rate in meetings. Even if they do attend, they don't speak, they turn themselves into voting machines. Well, loyalists, may enjoy a nap here, but they have to be here because there is the quorum requirement, which is half of all these members. However, after today or tomorrow, they will be liberated, emancipated, because they can enjoy a sleep in their own office or even on their own beds at home. After amending the ROP, well, actually, quorum is not the most important thing. What is more important is a meeting can be resumed at any time because it will reduce the risk of meeting abortion. So the accusation or the offense that we have dragged everyone down will disappear because meeting will be resumed any time. So at the risk of offending the basic law or contravening the basic law, you want to argue the quorum. The meeting may be aborted, but it will resume 15 minutes later. You wait for 4 hours, the meeting will be resumed after a meeting abortion. I think you would have saved a lot more time than the time spent on quorum calls. So why do you take every single chance to change the quorum just so you can be lazy? Jasper Zhang said that, well, when the political cost of a meeting abortion is lower, the higher risk there will be meeting abortion. You don't have to rush to come to a meeting at the risk of tripping and hurting yourself because the meeting will be resumed in 15 minutes. You'll be a lot freer. You are legislators. You speak for the people. You debate on matters. That's your natural duty. A lot of loyalists just sit here, whether they're sleeping or not. But their bodies are here, but their minds are elsewhere. And they're not listening. The former Secretary General, Pauline, said that, well, when you lower the quorum for committee, there would be no discussion. And if you don't listen to it, that means our jobs are not done. We don't listen to you. You don't listen to us. We don't even have to be here. You think it is a waste of time because you think that debate will not change things because we have already made your mind up before you step into this chamber. Even after a debate of 5, 10, 15 hours, you will vote in the same way. You will not change your mind regardless of what's said. That's why you think that it is a waste of time. Well, you have everything perfectly designed. You stop us, you restrict us, you limit us, you set a deadline for Monday. Well, a dozen of people will speak and everyone will speak for about 7 minutes. If you're so self-disciplined, then, well, very little time will be spent on meetings. In the colonial days, 3 o'clock. Meetings will adjourn because people just raise their hands to vote, to pass all the things. But now, times are different. We have more legislators. Members would like to illustrate their points, to lobby, to argue, to convince the administration. And these are our duties, whether you are a pan-democrat or loyalists. Of course, it takes time. You say that amending the ROP will will give you the courage to speak. How come today you don't? And I would like to reply on presentation of petition. When Mr. Martin Liao was talking, of course, there are a number of points that I don't agree. And he said in the UK they don't use presentation of petition by way of members standing up. They now do it by public. But he's only spoken half of the truth. In the UK, I would take 100,000 people to sign the petition for that to be dealt with, and that is the procedure of the House of Commons to deal with it. When there are 100,000 people signing the petition, then there will be a committee, and the matter will be debated. There may even be public hearings. And the meeting will be set up at the beginning of the term with 11 members. Say, for example, 5 from Tories, 5 from Labour, and 5 SNPs, and 1 SNPs. But it never says that, it will need half of members to support it before it is to be dealt with. So, whenever there are over 100,000 people signing the petition, the matter will be referred to the committee. Say, for example, a Lib Dem member started a petition to ask for another voting on Brexit. However, there are no Lib Dem members in the committee. However, on the 12th of December, there was a discussion, and even without Lib Dem members as a member of the committee, it has to be dealt with.
If the pro-establishment camp is saying that we follow the UK example, and if you say half of the members have to support the petition before it can be processed, then the petition will never be processed. I can do the sums with you. You say we should follow Britain. I won't rule out further amendments to the ROP. We have talked about that. President, if we can do it once, we will have to do it many more times later. Mr. Paul Chair might not want to convene the CROP meetings. And if our amendments are not processed at the CROP, of course, they cannot come to the Council, but we will not give up. Let me talk about the UK example. There are 67 million people in Britain, and petitions will be processed if there is support from 100,000. In Hong Kong, that would translate into 10,000 people supporting a petition. If that's the case, I believe the Legislative Council will have to deal with many petitions, because when we have a co-signing campaign on the internet, it's easy to get 10,000 signatures in 2 days. You say that this exercise is an anti-filibuster exercise to bring the Council back on the right track. But we have clarified many times that is not the purpose of petitions. Today we are fighting this battle because we want to reveal the laziness of the other camp, whether it be Carrie Lam, Matthew Cheung, or pro-establishment camp members. You say the ROP amendments will bring the Council back on the right track, but this is only your own thinking. After the vote is taken today, there will just be more struggles in this Council. The Council will just have even more difficult operation. Mr. Martin Liao, please restrain the horse before it falls down the cliff. Please stop speaking. Mr. Martin Liao. President. President, as I said when I moved the resolution, the proposed resolution is in line with public opinion. It is for the future of Hong Kong. Mr. Ray Chan, please stop shouting. In the past few days, Mr. Ray Chan, I will warn you again, if you don't go back to your seat and stop shouting, I will regard that you are involved in gross misconduct. Mr. Ray Chan, this is the final warning. Please sit down. Mr. Ray Chan, please withdraw from the chamber.
請各位同事保。
Members, order please. Return to your seats.
廖長江議員。
Mr. Martin Liao, President, as I was saying, the amendment exercise this time is in line with public aspirations. It is for Hong Kong's future and for Hong Kong as a whole. This is a major exercise. In the last few days, members have had heated comments made, and they are from different parties and affiliations. Of course, we are polarized in our views, but we have to talk reason, and reason cannot be wrong. Regardless of the background, political affiliation, and stance of the speakers, if they talk reason, I will be ready to listen. Unfortunately, in the past few days, I have heard from the non-establishment camp the stating of stances. Their arguments are premised on stances, and they give expression to their feelings and arguments more than reasonable thinking, and it doesn't help with the debating of issues. And also they resort to specious arguments, and they are repeated by their members. Here I will only give a summarized response. First of all, I'd like to respond to the voices of dissent. Mr. Ray Chan, Mr. Eddie Chu, Mr. Andrew Wan questioned me about the quorum of the committee stage amendment, saying that it is unconstitutional and so it should not be moved. But then there is an authority on public law supporting my amendment strongly, and the view is in the CROP paper. They are not sure about it, and they dare not speak about it. They dare not say that my amendment is definitely unconstitutional. The public are discerning, President. If you really place emphasis on whether this is constitutional, then why is it that you yourselves are also moving purely unconstitutional amendments? Why are you silent on it? The MPC interpretation of the basic law has stated clearly that members who are not legally sworn in should not enjoy parity treatment, but you are still moving amendments to say that even if a member is found to be not acting with a valid vote, they should still be entitled to the remuneration and benefits, etc. And in fact, you are just trying to protect filibusters, which are your common tools. And then Mr. Alvin YEUNG, Mr. Ip Kin Yuen, and Ms. Claudia Mo said that our amendments seek to undermine the powers of the Council and its power to monitor the administration. Mr. Claudia Mo and Mr. Shilka Chun said that this is amounting to self-emasculation. I would not agree at all. I have to clarify that our amendments seek to cut out filibuster. Of course, members have the right to speak in the Council, but they don't have the right to filibuster. The public would ask, what are they talking about when they say this a self-emasculation act? In fact, when this went to the court before, the court established that the President could set limits to the debate or terminate the debate to make sure that there is order in the Council, and this is, of course, commonly called filibuster. And therefore, the non-establishment camp's question of undermining powers is just the opposite. If we can have this amendment, then there will be no more filibusters, so we can have time for normal debates and also to vet funding proposals and the government's policies. So it is just the opposite. It is not an undermining of power, but rather it would allow the Council to function smoothly and discharge its duties. And this includes monitoring the administration. But members continue to say that this is an undermining the Council's powers. I think you are turning truth on its head, and you are not calling a spade a spade. And with regard to my amendment on petition, Mr. Alvin YEUNG, Mr. Jeremy Tam, Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. Lim Chek Ting, they questioned this amendment. Mr. Alvin YEUNG said that the Council would forever lose its power to investigate into politicians, especially the powers that be. This represents rather muddled thinking. It cannot hold water. First of all, the investigative powers of the Legislative Council does not target individuals but matters, and they target incidents of public interest, and it is not to target politicians and the powers that be. And in fact, the amendment this time around does not erode the investigative powers of the Council at all. This speaks both for petitions and the Council as a whole. We all know that if we want to set up a select committee to investigate into matters of major public interest, petitions is not the only tool. You can in fact move to set up a select committee in Council and empower it with the LCPMP ordinance in order to summon witnesses. This is even better than the select committee set up on the basis of a petition. But of course, the premise must be, President, that this is in line with the objective of setting up select committees. The non-establishment camp mentions nothing about these investigative powers. They are only saying that we are letting free the rich and famous and powers that be, and I think they are playing to the gallery. Mr. Alvin YEUNG blames us on changing the quorum for petition, but then he did not explain why he criticized us. I think what he says is a false representation and also very misleading. He is a member of the CROP. He should have read papers. He should have taken part in the meetings where amendments were discussed. But it seems he knows nothing about the papers we submitted to the CROP because we have listed our rationale there. The relevant paper has been discussed at the House Committee. It has been distributed to all members. In the gist, this is to bring things in line with what was pre-1997. That was the conventional way, that there should be the same quorum for Council as well as for presentation of petition, and that is half of the membership of the Council. But Mr. Alvin YEUNG still says we did not explain ourselves. But why? I think is Mr. YEUNG himself who did not explain his stance. President, Mr. Dennis Kwok, Ms. Tanya CHAN, and also Mr. Andrew Wan say they are very unhappy because they say the football association, the referee, the players, they are all in the same camp, and it is said that the president is biased. Well, this is very inaccurate as an analogy. This is not a soccer game. It is the Legislative Council here. It is a very important constitutional organ of the SAR. The President has his constitutional duties to make sure that the Council functions in an orderly manner so that it can discharge its constitutional functions. You always say the President is prejudiced, but put your hand on your heart. Are your proposals reasonable and implementable? Just look at this resolution to amend the ROP. Many of your camp say you do not have enough time for debate, but you request to have each amendment spoken on separately, and this would expand the speaking time for everyone to 3.5 hours. If this is approved, it is not just the remaining time for this year, and more time will still be needed before we can conclude the debate. The Council will not have any time for bills. We can't have time for government policies. And where can you find the time to monitor the administration? So please come clean. Do not always use this high-sounding slogan that you want to monitor the administration to cheat the public. And many non-establishment members say they want to emphasize our power to monitor the administration. I like to tell members that this is just one of the functions stated in the basic law as to the relationship between the executive and the legislature. Mr. Ji Pengfei, the chairman of the Basic Law Drafting Committee, said very clearly that the executive and the legislature and how they should be related, well, there should be check and balance, and also there should be cooperation, he said. For the sake of Hong Kong's stability and executive efficiency, the CE should have substantive powers, but she or he should be checked and balanced against. But non-establishment members choose the expedient thing to do, and they will not mention the phrase that the two should cooperate. So they pick and choose what they like, and they turn a blind eye to what they do not like. This is not some respect for the basic law. And this is not in line with their oath, saying that they pledge allegiance to the basic law. And they always object to policies and bills proposed by the administration to say that they are resisting authoritarianism. But this is not constructive. This harms the overall interests of Hong Kong.
President, Mr. Dennis Kwok said he wrote to me, and in a hope to reach a consensus, I reiterate that the pro-establishment camp is open for dialogue, but it takes two to tango. The non-pro-establishment camp has set very harsh conditions or requirements, so this is all just a PR exercise in the eyes of the public. I do not question the sincerity of Mr. Dennis Kwok, but I'm not sure if other members just wanted to put up a show. I want to thank pro-establishment members who spoke in support of my resolution because they explained the justification, so I won't repeat them here. President, I have some personal feelings to share. As I've stressed, my resolution does not serve to curb filibustering. We just want to bring under control the current abuse of the ROP. So I hope that non-pro-establishment members who who give focus to the quality of debates would understand our intentions, but we are met with one disappointment after another. The resolutions were debated at the Committee on ROP, and I have moved my resolution and I'm speaking on this. This is not an easy process at all. The non-pro-establishment camp try to dominate as a minority, and they are abusing the ROP. And this is exactly the purpose of moving such amendments. The pro-establishment camp has always been open to dialogue with different parties, but as of now, I think we have reached breaking point. Something must be done to save the legislature. And this is the time for LegCo to once again become a solemn body. I now call upon Mr. Paul Chair to reply, then the debate will come to a close. Mr. Paul Chair. Thank you. President, I was rather agitated at the beginning. This morning, a number of pro-establishment colleagues spoke with quality, even though not many of them spoke. The quality of what they said far exceeded members on our right, and of which many of them spoke for as much as 45 minutes, but what they said was meaningless. Like Dr. K.K. Kwok, he just repeated the same arguments again and again. I was rather agitated at the beginning because it was a form of passion. When you face injustice, it will spark the passion within you. With years of constant filibustering, which jeopardizes our future and Hong Kong, you would rightly feel angry. When we talk about the harms of filibustering, even Ms. Tanya CHAN explained the consequences of filibustering. Mr. WU Chi-wai also cited many reasons or ways how filibuster would affect the quality of the debate here. And why is the government giving us less and less information? Because the more information they provide, the more they would be challenged. My mentor, Patrick Wong, who passed away recently, used to tell me that no matter how justified you are, you must be courteous when you deal with the government. I've been a barrister and solicitor. If no matter how right you are, then if you upset the judge, you would not enjoy any discretion. If you are being so personal, I think Mr. Jeremy Tam was a great example. Perhaps he was too obsessed with me, and he said, well, I am actually proud of my history. When I was 40 years old, I put on the suit because I wanted to fight against the oppression from the law society. Jeremy Tam is trying to interrupt. Back then, when I was younger, I used to be agitated easily. I was in a lawsuit with Chen King-hon, and the jury's verdict was 7-0. And at the Court of Final Appeal, a British judge wanted to interpret the law, and so the verdicts of the jury should be overruled. So I think I had no expectation, or I didn't have much expectations of the interpretation of law. I also felt very angry when I had my fight against the Law Society. I wanted to take out advertisements because I wanted to promote legal services to the masses, and I received a crackdown, and the kind of procedural violence was much more serious than the current scene, and I spent much more money. So you should not think that you need not pay a price for the non-pro-establishment camp to my right.
你哋講得咁好聽。
What you said sounded rosy, but when with your claims that the resolutions might be unconstitutional, which of them would have launched judicial reviews? Of course, Jeremy Tam has 4 properties, so he wouldn't want to go bankrupt. Sit down. Well, he's interrupting, Mr. Jeremy Tam. President, he said I should be the one filing a judicial review. I don't really understand how it relates to what he said. He's using his round to attack others. Please be seated. Mr. Roy Kwong, what is the point of order? Some members are speculating. Well, he can give names, but are you speculating on the intentions of other members? I'm just saying what it is. The Civic Party often say that the amendments are unconstitutional. They are being hypocritic because that's not what they will do. What is the point of order, Mr. Roy Kwong? The Muppet is calling someone an idiot. I don't know who you are referring to, so I cannot make a ruling. Mr. Charles Peter MOK. President, whether it's anger or passion, can the President ask Mr. Paul Chair to calm down? This is not a point of order, but there is a need. Please be seated. This is the fourth day of the debate, and I hope members can calm themselves and try not to interrupt others. Dr. Kwok. Mr. Chair sounds very educated, so I have concerns about his health. If he needs to see a doctor, I believe he would do so.
Mr.
Paul Chair, what is the point of order? Mr. Andrew Wong. What Mr. Paul Chair was offensive. I hope he can take back his words. He told Roy Kwong that if you do not sit down, I will call you an idiot again. Mr. Paul Chair, please continue. I think I was not being very creative. I should have avoided the word creative. Idiot. Are you going to make a ruling on the word idiot? He even called people jackals. A jackal is calling someone else an idiot. Mr. Paul Chair. Mr. Paul Chair, please continue. You can call me whatever you want. That's how we would address you from now on. Mr. Paul Chair. President, what is the point of order? Under Rule 39(b), we have the right to ask for clarification. He took back on his words, but he has yet to take back his words this time. Mr. Paul Chair, do you wish to clarify? I only said if not, I would call you an idiot, so that Mr. Roy Kwong, what is the point of order? Again, under Rule 39(b), he is being way too agitated, so please ask him to calm down and take back the things he said wrong. Mr. Roy Kwong asked for a clarification. Mr. Paul Chair, do you wish to clarify what you said? If not, you can continue. Thank you. I will continue. The Civic Party is like a Teflon pan. This is not a clarification. This is a point of order. Mr. Roy Kwong. Well, I'm not Roy Kwong. Mr. Jeremy Tam, what is the point of order? He said, you are a coward, so that was offensive. I see that Mr. Paul Chair might sound nervous, but Mr. Paul Chair, did you say any, did you label any member a coward? No. Members, please do not interrupt with other members' rounds with point of order. Mr. Roy Kwong, point of order. Under 41 brackets for the use of offensive or abusive language would be out of order. Mr. Paul Chair breached that rule. He pointed at someone and said they are a coward. Mr. Paul Chair, I did not call anyone a coward. And Mr. Paul Chair pointed out that he did not call anyone a coward, and he did not give any names. That is my ruling. Mr. Paul Chair, please continue. Mr. Roy Kwong, if you abuse point of order, the speaker is not on the microphone. Mr. Roy Kwong, I'm referring to Rule 41 brackets 4. Unless Mr. Paul Chair was talking to himself when he was deeming someone a coward or idiot, why did you not make the ruling, Andrew Leung? He did not name any member. Many members often refer to people from a camp, for example, the pro-establishment camp. If this persists, the Council cannot continue. I have made my ruling, and I have asked Mr. Paul Chair for a clarification, and I clarify that he had no such intention. So, Mr. Paul Chair, please continue.
Dr. Kokaki, Mr. Paul Tse said you are a coward. Who did he mean by you? Himself? Mr. Paul Tse, would you like to clarify? If not, please continue. There's no need for me to clarify. Well, if you say that any of the amendments is unconstitutional, then of course you can pay to take it to court. Don't forget that Civic Party rose because of Article 23. This is not a point of order. I have already made my ruling. It is not a breach of the ROP. I have already made my ruling. Mr. Porter, please continue. Well, the Civic Party started because of Article 23. Why did they not use the favorable battleground, the court, to do what they are best at? Of course, it's easier said than done. They would not put their money where their mouth is. A lot of non-loyalists said that they don't have enough time. They only have about 18 seconds or so. But they wasted their time on something unnecessary. They used their time to speak like a broken record, harping on the same thing, or they target on someone's background, saying that, my protests, actually my glorious past, my record of protests. And they even refer to my proposal to amend this 5 foot 4 inches. Well, quoting Mr. Dennis Kwok, you are not up to standard. I was talking about that economic or financial means is one of the areas. Well, if you say that if you restrict someone under a certain means not to stand in an election, that is not fair. It's just like when you limit someone's height or age or this and that. Why do you think that if you limit someone because of the financial means, that is right? You need to learn, Jeremy Tam. If you refer to the recordings, well, Tanya Chan was very serious. You were very serious, but if it were an exam, you failed because you've only picked one of the questions to carefully answer it. Of course, every member is given a time limit. Of course, you have to focus on what you're best at, just like in an examination. a notice, say for example, something comes into effect on the 8th of January, and it takes over 10 hours of discussion, then there is no quality. It is the fundamental duty of legislator to selectively pick that topic. If you fail that, you fail your duty. Well, 3 sessions, 45 minutes. What nonsense have you been coming up with? Well, the Civic Party, you have got a village of barristers. There's only one with some substance is Margaret Ng. Have you read thoroughly what she has written? There is one point she mentioned, but it wasn't mentioned by any of you. You only stay on the surface saying that 3 pieces of legal advice, 2 against 1. You only focused on that. I thank a member for giving the introduction. That is in relation to the history of committee in the whole council. I thank Mr. Horace Yeung because it saves me a lot of time. Otherwise, I would need to do it. It's rather boring, but it's necessary. How come the Civic Party did not do what is necessary? You just try to muddle the water and pull wool over the eyes of the public and the audience. Alan Leung said in a radio interview on an internet radio program, saying that loyalists use tricks and threats. Yes, I agree. Non-loyalists use tricks and threats. You have been harping on Article 23, using it as a threat. You have not done your homework. You just refer to these digests. Please, you use tricks, you use threats, and that's these are the only tricks you have up your sleeve. When it comes to let me do an autopsy. Perhaps it's premature to analyze why the Pan-Democrats would all be doomed. People know that you are using tricks and threats. You use the word laziness to accuse us. Who is the lazy one? You don't read anything. You're lazy. Your speeches are frivolous and meaningless. That's lazy. Well, like Jeremy Tam. Mr. Jeremy Tam is like my in-law. Well, it's Paul TSE. Well, I hope that he won't refer me as his relative, because I'm not related to him at all. Well, I'm just using some kind of jargon. I said in-laws because I want to insinuate that there is a subtle relations between us. Mr. Jeremy Tam, I do need an elucidation, because at the outset he said that, well, I was obsessed with him. I let that go. He's narcissistic. I let that go. But now he said in-law and subtle relations, and now subtle relations. I have no subtle relations, the relationship with him. Mr. Paul TSE, you're asked to clarify your relationship with him. Are you going to clarify? If not, please continue. I will. I only used a term that is commonly used nowadays, in-laws. That is, well, we get along. We understand each other, but at the same time, we like to pick on one another at the same time. Well, if he say that he wants to mislead people to say that I have, a certain inclination. Well, he said that, he and I are of the same mind and heart. Well, I'm afraid not, because I think he only shared the same mind and heart with Miss Pack. Well, it's for Mr. Tse to clarify, and also Mr. Tam, you can use other platforms to clarify your point. Mr. Paul Tse. Well, when it comes to a litigation, when it comes to picking your battleground, it's not about division of labor. You have to make sure that when it comes to the legal advice, you don't cherry pick. Well, Dennis Kwok always said, I clearly remembered it about protest. That is, if you are fighting for love or if you're in a battle, everything is fair. I understand that you criticize me for being agitated because this is a battleground. Without citing what the other members have said, when there is a visit to the shrine, Jesus when it goes to this synagogue, well, Jesus remove everything. Well, I see that when it comes to nonsense like this, of course, even a saint will get angry. I see several dozens of demons here. You use the right weapon in a war. All is fair in love and war. Time flies. It's not my intention, nor do I have time to address attacks on me personally. I really appreciate what Mr. Abraham Sheikh said and those who followed him. They are targeted. They analyzed. They based on facts. So they have raised the moral ground a lot higher. Sorry if I have misinterpreted you. I apologize. If I stoop myself lower, you have to apologize. I apologize because I have to stoop to their level for them to understand. I just hope that today's so-called struggle protest will mention a lot of animals, and I would like to use an animal to describe today's situation. You have to be a phoenix, born out of fire. You rise from the ashes because the council will be phoenix rising out of ashes. Well, we promise our constituents, we win this battle. We hope that there will be more mutual trust, more cooperation, so that the council will rise from the ashes like a phoenix.
請各位同事坐低。如果各位
Members, please sit down. If you don't, I have to strictly implement the ROP. Mr. Chiu Ka-chun, Dr. Fernando Cheung, please return to your seats immediately. If you refuse, you are deemed misbehaving. Mr. Chiu Ka-chun, Mr. Dr. Fernando Cheung, please return to your seats immediately. Dr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Chiu Ka-chun, my last warning to you. If you do not return to your seats immediately, then I deem that this is gross misbehavior, misconduct, and I will have to order you to leave the chamber. Mr. Chiu Ka-chun, Dr. Fernando Cheung, are you going to return to your seats? Mr. Shiu Ka-chun, Dr. Fernando Cheung, please leave the chamber immediately. Please return to your seats, members.
The meeting will be suspended for 10 minutes.